Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm so pleased that we're all able to gather together today, and I want to say early happy International Women's Day to everyone. International Women's Day is all about celebrating the achievements of women and empowering women to reach new heights. And as Alberta's government, as your government, we've been working hard to ensure that women continue to be an integral part of the province's economic future. And in fact, as I was mentioning earlier, Alberta's economic future will be bleak if we are not able to strengthen and enhance women's positions in all parts of our economy. Recently, you may know that we've introduced some new scholarships that support women in STEM and fields in which women are typically underrepresented. And we've been also funding projects to create new opportunities for women to succeed in the workforce, including some forthcoming announcements that I think will be of particular interest to women entrepreneurs. One of the biggest steps I think that we've taken that's so critically important is Minister Rebecca Schultz was able to negotiate a Made in Alberta daycare plan that will actually drop by 50% daycare fees for most families. And I think that's just so critical in giving women the opportunity to pursue their careers more effectively. We know that childcare costs have been a real challenge for a lot of Alberta families, a lot of Alberta women. And so we're really pleased that deal has been undertaken and it's now in full swing. So I'm looking forward to seeing the results in our economy coming from that. At every step of the way in our path to recovery, I want to make sure that we're listening to women from all backgrounds to make sure that Alberta's government is serving your needs. And I'm eager to have a discussion with all of you today about the challenges and the opportunities that are faced by women in business. We've got a group of incredible women today, and I want to just quickly introduce them, and then they're going to talk a little bit about themselves as well. We have Michelle Andrusak, who is the founder and CEO of WOW, Women in Business and Leadership. She's passionate about empowering women in business and has created a supportive network of female entrepreneurs. So welcome, Michelle. Next, we have Melana Radakovich, and she's the president and owner of Nexus Exhibits Limited, and she's also Canada's ambassador for the Women's Entrepreneurship Day organization. And then we've got also Darby Lee Young, who works to elevate the accessibility and inclusivity of private and public spaces in Calgary and across North America through her consulting agency called Level Playing Field. So welcome to all of you. You each bring a unique perspective to this discussion, and I am so excited to hear what you have to share with us today. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Kristen for what's, I'm sure, going to be a really great discussion this afternoon.
Thanks, Associate Minister. For those opening remarks, I'll just have each of the panelists spend 2 or 3 minutes telling us about your leadership and your business journey here in Alberta. So let's start with Michelle. So I'll get you to kick things off, Michelle, and tell us all about yourself. You've got a couple of minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll go to Darby and finish with Melana. Michelle.
Great. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Andrusak, as said. I am a certified business consultant designated with CMC Canada and an award-winning business coach. I am the CEO of WOW International Women in Business. Primarily, the network that I operate comes from women doing business in Alberta, whether they be home-based or whether they're moving into manufacturing or creating apps or the digital realm, or whether they be storefront. And I started WOW, let me see here, about 7 years ago. And because I realized in my consulting practice that women and men do business very differently, and that women really seek those peer-to-peer support relationships. And sometimes in getting even into entrepreneurship and getting to the point of growing and scaling their established businesses, they also recognize the need for support and realize that they didn't want to do it alone. And I always say, just because you're in business for yourself should never mean you're doing it alone. So I created WOW simply as a networking event in Rocky Mountain House, my hometown, where the women who were in business were wearing multiple hats. You know, they're at the soccer field and they're doing all the different hats that women in business do as coaches and community leaders and business owners, but they were siloed in their own businesses. They would go to their store, they would open it up, they'd run their business, they'd wear all the hats, and didn't have an opportunity to communicate with each other to find peer-to-peer support. So that's when I invited 17 women in my local community for lunch 7 years ago, with the caveat saying, I know your kids, I love them. And I know, Susie's doing really well in ballet and Scott's doing really well in soccer. But today we want to talk like the guys. We want to talk about business. And we want to learn from each other. What's working well? What are you struggling with? How can we help each other? And how can we get to know each other to the point where we start supporting each other and purchasing from each other's businesses versus going to the city to box stores? And so from that day, while we expanded over the last 7 years to serving 13 communities across Alberta with those events and one in BC, and then COVID. But COVID gave us the opportunity to expand internationally. So I run a group of over 3,000 women in business online through a Facebook group, and a VIP community of over 100 women who participate in mastermind groups to support each other, to grow, learn new techniques and systems, so they're working smarter, not harder, and can take weekends off. What a concept for a woman in business. And also to generate those profits that their family needs to give, so they can give back to the community, because women are way more generous with their profits, giving back to nonprofits because they're very heart-centered. And also being able to afford little Johnny's soccer practice, or, supporting local communities and donating to the local women's shelter. And more importantly, finding joy in their business because they realize they're not alone. They realize that they're supported, and on those tough days, and we all have them as women in business and women in leadership, where you think, I don't even know why I'm doing this anymore, they have a safe place to go and someone to call to say, I just need help getting out of my own head today so I can move forward. So through that journey of the last 7 years, I have walked the walk of being a woman in business myself, and wearing all the hats, and then being profitable enough to start giving back to the community. And it's been such an amazing journey. And I've been so blessed by the people who have joined my community and my network online and in person, that every day it's such a blessing just to show up. So I guess that's my story.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate that. We'll dive into your stories following your introduction. So we'll have Darby go ahead and introduce yourself. Darby?
Hi, thank you so much. It's great to be on this call. I'm the founder and principal of Level Playing Field. We're an accessibility consulting firm that works to make sure spaces are accessible for all those invisible and visible disabilities. And the biggest thing for me is the fact that as a person with a disability, I've got cerebral palsy, trying to get and trying to make people see past the disability aspect, and that see me for an actual woman and a female, and for everything that I've achieved. Luckily, with Level Playing Field, we've been able to remove barriers across the country. We're across Canada, coast to coast to coast, working to remove barriers so that persons with disabilities, whether they're invisible or visible, can enjoy life and enjoy their communities and be a part from that aspect. So I'm interested in being part of this conversation today. So thank you.
Thanks, Darby. Nice to meet you. And let's go to Melana.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here and given an opportunity to be a voice. It's such an honor to be here with such amazing women. So my journey, I'm actually an immigrant. I came here in 1979, sorry, when my family immigrated from Belarus. One of the things I just want to send a prayer to what's happening overseas right now. I do have connections. I belong to a few organizations, and there's so much amazing women entrepreneurs who are now trying to flee and for their safety. So I just want to make a little prayer for them. So my journey actually as an entrepreneur started in the corporate world. Even though, as my father always said, he always knew I would own my own business one day. I started working in the corporate world, and I got really passionate about supporting and invigorating additional women leaders in the corporate world. I was involved in a variety of different organizations, sitting on boards of OID organization, Women in International Trade, and then Women in Leadership Foundation, really wanting to help women advance in their fields. I'm a mother of two. So when I can totally relate when we're talking about juggling work and family. And a lot of people always ask me, how do you find a balance? I said, it's not a balance, it's just way of life. You just make things happen. There is no secret to it. The only secret I can say, as I always say, is find a great partner. And I was very lucky. My husband has been very supportive in me. And when I had my own consulting firm for a few years after I left the corporate world as VP of marketing and started my consulting firm, because I was very passionate in helping small and medium-sized companies who couldn't necessarily afford a CMO or a VP of marketing, as that's my background. And I really wanted to help small and medium-sized companies. And then Nexus Exhibits, the company which I own now, I acquired it in 2013. I started as their joining the company because we hit a recession in 2010, and both my husband and I were consultants. So we decided that one of us has to get a job, and my husband was in construction, so it would be a lot harder for him to get a job with benefits. And we had 2 daughters, a new house, and a live-in nanny. So I joined the workforce and back into the workforce from the entrepreneur, closed down my consulting firm and fell in love with Nexus Exhibits. It was a company that I had used for over 20 years in my corporate world for displays and events. And then I acquired it in 2013, and it's been an amazing journey. I've had some ups and downs. I've gone through 2 recessions and 1 pandemic, and knock on wood, as a woman entrepreneur, I survived. And as you can understand it with the pandemic, the last 2 years have been extremely hard. I'm in the events industry, and the minister was very kind to have me join the task force to really help and talk about how important the events industry is, and so how we could get support for entrepreneurs in that industry. Unlike some of my counterparts, I was just mentioning that even out east, some of the bigger visual events companies actually closed down, and they were owned by men. I think women are more agile. I was able to quickly pivot in the first 2 weeks. Unfortunately, I had to lay off 2/3 of my team, but the team that I had left, we all got together and we said, how can we help the community? We're going to start opening up. And this is going back to 2020 when there were stages. The first stages would be the medical fields. After the 2 weeks of closure, would be opening up. So I said, how can we give back and really support the community? So we said, what do they need? They're going to need hygiene guards for counters. They're going to need disposable masks because you can't get them. They're going to need hand sanitizers. So we quickly went to our supply base and said, okay, how can we get this into the hands of our community so they could start up and start working again? So knock on wood, we did that. And where I lost 90% of my business, I was able to gain 10% back. And thanks to the subsidies and the new business I acquired through pivoting quickly, we survived. And now as was mentioned, I got nominated in 2019 as the Canada Ambassador of Women's Entrepreneurship Day organization. It's a global movement We're the only non-governing 100% volunteer base. And in the end of 2019, I took that role. I'm very passionate. I'm a big believer that to alleviate poverty in the world, we need to educate and empower the next generation of female entrepreneurs to really make a difference. As myself as an example, we survived. We pivoted and we looked at how do we help the community first. We didn't look at our books. We just needed to survive, but I wanted to make sure that the community can survive as well. So I've been very fortunate. I sit on the board of EO Entrepreneurs Organization, and as I mentioned, the foundation We Do Canada. And my mission is really to help alleviate poverty, not only across the world, but even in our back doors. Thank you.
Thanks, Melana. And I also just want to thank you for bringing, the Ukraine to the top of mind. I think it's such a challenging time in the world, and many people are very worried, similar to you, about the state of the world. But I also just wanted to say to everybody, you're so inspirational. I think you set us up well for a great dialogue. You've pretty much covered all the bases for all of the questions that I'll get us into the conversation on. Before I do that, Associate Minister, did you have any comments before we jump into the Q&A?
Sure. I just love hearing the journey stories. I think it's so incredibly important. I remember back when I started my little business, I came out of university. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And this little store on Stephen Avenue came up for sale. And so I bought it. I scraped together this money that I thought that I was going to save to buy a house. Well, I didn't buy a house. I bought a business instead. And it was one of those times where you just sort of hold your breath and you go, well, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to step in the water now. And then once you're in it, you have no choice. You have to keep going. And from there, had a couple of kids and did buy a house eventually. Yeah. But did that whole piece of wearing different hats and being in business. And there were times when I was alone. I was fortunate. I had a couple of girlfriends who graduated university about the same time as I did, who also started businesses. So I had a couple of friends to rely on, but we didn't have sort of large networks to rely upon. And, trying to figure out how you go to a bank to get financing, trying to figure out, some of your supply chain issues. Back then. I mean, we didn't call it supply chain back then, actually, but this is a number of years ago. But just trying to figure out some of those issues of, how do you finance your business? How do you deal with your payables and your receivables? How do you deal with supply chain? And you often felt like you were just inventing it from the ground up. But then you talk to a girlfriend or another girlfriend who was also doing the same thing, realize, okay, we're all doing this. It's not as bleak as I think. There's actually great opportunity out there, and then you fall in love with your business, and it's just a lifelong love. It's a really remarkable experience, and I hope that more women can have the experience of entrepreneurship. I think it helps you grow as a person. It gives you great strength to tackle many other things that you're going to do in your life, like in my case, going into politics. I've often said political campaigns are kind of like starting your own little business. You run it for about 90 days and then you shut it down again. And but it's really helped. My business experience has really helped me and inspired me actually to become a leader in politics. So I'm excited to hear about your input into how we can encourage more women to become entrepreneurs, how we can support the women who are entrepreneurs, and strengthen their experience so that they can grow and scale up and carry on.
Thanks, Minister. So just diving right into the conversation here, I would like to ensure that everybody gets an opportunity to chat about a few questions that we have prepared and to build off of each other's comments. So I'll just try and monitor make sure that if I see you unmute, I'll ask you to go ahead. You know, International Women's Day is an opportunity for us to celebrate ourselves and each other, and think about self-promotion as well as pay it forward. So let's kick it off with my first question, which is, you know, I wouldn't mind if each of you could dig into, you know, what you're most proud of. What's an achievement that you are most proud of? You all touched on that in your introductory remarks for sure, but if there was one thing that you could tell us that you're most proud of, what would it be? So Darby, maybe we'll get you to kick it off.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I think the one thing I'm most proud of is the fact that I haven't had my disability stop me. It's definitely been extremely difficult as a person with a disability within the workforce to, one, get a job to start with, but then to actually start a company is even harder. And then when you've got the big banks and financial funding, it's just not available. Because even though I'm female, I've got a disability, we're a for-profit, so we don't qualify for anything. So I think my most proudest moment is the fact that we are now 7. I've been able to work like I have and been able to make the dollars that we have independently through clients, through work, and through family and friends in order to be successful, and just thrive and show other individuals with disabilities that you can make a difference in the community if you put your mind to it.
Wow, thanks, Darby. That's an amazing story. Let's hear from Michelle or Melana. Who would like to go next?
I can go. I think one of there's a few incidents, but as I mentioned, I went through 2 recessions in the pandemic, and I think surviving through the pandemic was probably the hardest, because that's the one that really affected my team. And I remember when we were told that we're going to be closing down for 2 weeks, and I just had hired, we just were going through a huge growth. I had just hired a few new people, and I remember going home and just crying to my husband, and I'm just saying, oh my God, because my controller, my second in command, just called me and she goes, you know what's going to happen on Monday. And that was, we were going to have I would have to lay people off. And I was just, that whole weekend, I don't think I slept. I drank a lot of wine, but I definitely did not sleep much, because I just couldn't imagine coming in. And I remember the one lady I had just hired on, and her and I sat down, we were all meeting in the boardroom, and I was actually meeting one-on-one on everyone. I believed it was really important. I've always been transparent with my team through good and bad, always told it how it is. I always believe that the best leaders are the ones who are transparent and truly authentic with their teams. And we sat down, and I remember I had to tell her, I said, I am so sorry, but I'm going to have to let you go, because I don't know how long this is going to go for. And as I was telling her, and she said to me, she goes, it's okay, Melana. It's okay. I understand what you're going through. You need to do this. And she goes, I'm here for you anytime. And it literally brought tears to my eyes. I was just like, I just felt so bad I had to do it, but she was so understanding. And then the rest of the team was just like that. They're like, you know what, whatever we have to do. And the team that was left, I had to either reduce hours or reduce their salaries. And they still had a smile when they came in and were checking in on me. They're like, I see you're always smiling, Melana. I don't know how you're doing. And that's something I'm very proud of, is I've always had an amazing support team.
Thank you. Michelle.
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. So I think what I'm most proud of is creating community for women to support each other. And, you know, you're all, as a leader, you're only as successful as the women that you lead. So when I see 90% of my community being able to pivot in crisis or support each other in crisis, and they're able to lean on each other and know that their network is there, that success, and that's what I'm most proud of, to see what they're doing within the community and how they're supporting each other and how they've become almost like a family, where they will always reach back into the WOW community if they need somebody, or if they're looking for somebody, or if they just need a Zoom coffee date to get them through their day. And that's what I think I'm most proud of. I've been, you know, I've won a variety of different national and provincial awards. You can find that on LinkedIn. You know, Woman of Inspiration, Boss Chick Mentor, Woman of Excellence. They're great. And there's really nothing like having a new, you know, ornament to dust on my bookshelf. But the success is in the success of my community. And I'm so, so proud of the women that who they are as individuals. They're like Melina and they like Darby, who don't let anybody stop them. And they keep moving forward regardless of the roadblock that they need to navigate. And so that's what I'm really proud of, is the community that's been built within WOW Women in Business.
Yeah, I was writing a few notes, and you know, the top 3 themes so far is just the ability to overcome at all costs, really, and supporting each other, and just pure perseverance. I think the first half an hour, I think we'll transition to something that the Associate Minister brought up in her opening remarks. The government of Alberta were really interested in understanding how we can support women entrepreneurs, and maybe we'll transition to what ideas do you have, you know, that would help us support you and your fellow women business owners going forward. So I'll just open up the floor, and whoever wants to jump into that question, we'd love to hear from each of you.
I'd love to jump in. And I'd love to jump in because I'm hearing from 3,000 women in my community what they need. And what they need is support services that help them elevate their level of expertise as they pivot. What worked, as Melina will tell you, what worked 2 years ago in the marketing world is not working now. It's completely different. And they need to up-level their own skills, but also communities where they find that peer-to-peer support, developing mastermind groups, for example, and then mentoring programs where they, as experienced entrepreneurs, I know Melina and Darby would probably jump right on in if I said, hey, would you like to be a mentor for a young entrepreneur? And so mentoring programs, I think, you know, first of all, abilities to up-level their skills at affordable prices. Secondly, ability for peer-to-peer support through mastermind programs, and the opportunity to give back through mentoring. So the next generation that's coming up after us will have someone to call when they need help too. That's my thoughts.
Can I just ask, what is a mastermind?
Yeah,
Great.
great question. So the mastermind concept was coined by Napoleon Hill in his business acumen, Think and Grow Rich. But he noted that it was an observation of a group that came out of the relationship between Thomas Edison and Henry Ford, where groups of men in business would come together on a regular basis, create a safe place to have those really difficult conversations about what was going on behind the scenes, or I would say beyond the highlights reel of Facebook these days, and to get real with each other and support each other. So it's an intimate group of 6 to 8 people who are committed to learning, supporting, and helping each other elevate to the next level. And it certainly has been one of the popular services that I offer through WOW.
I saw, Melina, you jumped also on your mic. I have one follow-up question as well for Michelle, just in terms of supporting women business owners in rural Alberta. So given that you're out in Rocky, I just wanted to hone in on that specifically. If you have any thoughts, if there's any kind of differences that you would see in terms of support required for a woman out in rural Alberta, and then we'll go to
Yeah.
Melana.
Well, I think it's not the types of services that are different. I think it's the level of accessibility, because rural Alberta, it's not like I can run down into Business Link in Edmonton, for example, or pop out to Alberta Women Entrepreneurs that's in Edmonton. There are few and far between resources that are available in small centers that are 10,000 and less population. So women with the many hats of being a mom and a community volunteer and a business owner, they seriously don't have a lot of time to take a day, shut down their business and go look for resources in Edmonton and Calgary. That's why having, online resources, especially for rural citizens who have relatively good Wi-Fi, which is also a challenge sometimes in our communities, alleviates that, rather than having to give an entire day to look for a skill set or look for a group or look for support. They only need to give an hour. And that makes a big difference in the life of a woman in business who's picking up their kids from school and dropping them off at childcare as they're running to do some customer invoicing in between.
Thanks, Michelle. That's really helpful. Let's go to Melana, and then we'll go to Darby. Melana?
Interesting enough, I was just speaking with my second in command today, and she just informed me that her after school care is closing down because she's moving away. And the lady literally lives 2 blocks away. And she's now, her and I said, it was interesting. She said to me, did you know I was paying over $700 a month for literally 2 hours for after school care for her daughter who goes to an elementary school. And she was saying that if she takes away, if she doesn't do that, and for instance, doesn't, like right now, I'm extremely flexible when it comes to people working at my office. It's one of the things I always believe family is first. I've always treated my staff and my company as my second family. And I even still said, we're going to still work partially virtual, partly at home, because I have seen nothing has changed. In fact, I believe that work ethic has actually increased with the ability of giving that opportunity to work from home. So her and I are talking about her working from home, and that she would she was saying she'll take her lunch and go and pick up her daughter in between. I said, no, don't do that. Take your lunch. If you have to drive out and pick up your daughter and bring her home, then do it. Because if that money can go towards your mortgage and you're able to pay off your mortgage quicker, then that's fantastic. I'm happy to hear about the daycare program that we're going to now have in Alberta, but what about for people who not necessarily qualify for that or the daycare? I believe we need to do a little bit more for like before and after school care to help the women who are not only working, but besides the entrepreneurs, but we should be able to looking at women in the workplace, because it's not like they're going to say, oh no, my husband is going to go, because that's still the biases is perceived. It's the woman who leaves work early if her daughter or child is sick, stays home if her child is sick. You don't see a lot of men doing that these days. And I think that's something that we need to look at and really lobby for not only government support, but corporate consideration for women to be able to do that. And then it was really interesting, Michelle, when you mentioned about the organizations, you're right, outside. There is organizations in the city, but it would be really nice for instance, one of the things on our mandate is we want to create a mentorship program in person and online. And as I mentioned, we don't have the funds for that right now because all of our funding goes into the scholarship program for aspiring female entrepreneurs. But mentorship program, I think, is really important to have for existing and aspiring. I'm very lucky. I belong to EO Entrepreneurs organization. There are, I believe there's chapters outside of Calgary and Edmonton as well. But the beauty of it is that if you don't qualify to be an EO member, we do have a GROW membership. It's an accelerated program for entrepreneurs that, for instance, don't have the minimum requirements to have EO, but where you get matched with a coach. So there are organizations, but I really wish that we could have an opportunity or a database to really expose that. And that's something that we want to do at WeDo, is we want to create an ecosystem of organizations, government support that we can really blast through our social network and really promote and support entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs across Canada.
Thanks, Melana. Lots of great nuggets there.
Can I ask a quick follow-up?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, Melana, when we speak about scaling up business, do you think that, you know, you were speaking about the flexibility in the workplace and how important that is for women. Do you think that might be one of the hindrances that we find as women try to scale up their businesses, is being able to provide that flexibility, not only for themselves, but for their teams, in order to be able to, like, how much of workplace flexibility is a challenge for upscaling or for scaling?
That's a really good question. And I can't speak for all the entrepreneurs, but I know from in my network of small and medium-sized businesses, right now competing for labor is very hard. I belong to a few different groups. I've been very lucky through EO. I belong in a marketing and agency groups, and even the male business owners are saying it's very hard. So they're trying to be flexible, just like and I'm giving them ideas like, you know, have flexible hours, be open to creating programs for your staff. So that way it's not all financial. Different people look at the overall package, and flexibility right now is big, especially for either the experienced staff, but also into the new age. A lot of the newer graduates so far, who, for instance, have just been literally in the virtual world, are almost scared to enter the in-person world. So I'm always saying, if you can offer some kind of flexibility. Now, interesting enough, I'm not about to badge any of the government, but Ontario created this grant, and I found out through another EOer, they gave a $5,000 grant to businesses to help them convert their business into the virtual world. So in other words, if you needed to, for instance, buy computers or laptops for staff or chairs so that they could work virtually, that grant was available. I got into it a little bit too late and it was all gone, because they did open it up to other provinces, but it was interesting enough, it was out of Ontario that created that grant. I had also companies in the medical field that were buying disposable masks from me through this grant. So if we could offer some kind of a grant to create flexibility programs for their staff, and it could be like they create a business plan to say, what changes do you need to make to ensure that you can hire additional people? And if those people need to have flexibility to work from home or work flexible hours, then you can apply for this grant. Just an idea.
Very interesting. Thank you, Melana. And I noticed, Darby, you were, when Melana said that we're in a competitive and tight labor market, you were nodding. So I'll hand it over to you. And I also know from your opening remarks, you also mentioned challenges with procuring finance for your business. So let's hear from you.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, I think to fall back on the staffing issue, it's definitely a problem for somebody like myself. Like for what I do, we're in architecture. One, to find the schooling, but then to find the schooling, and then those, because of the government subsidies like CERB and stuff, people just haven't wanted to return to work. And we're in a situation where we're here in the office. We've got quite a bit of space so everybody can sort of venture out, but to try and find people that are passionate about wanting to work now, and especially post-COVID, seems to be a bit of a problem because, like Melana, we also do events. So I do a lot of music festivals like Coachella and Stagecoach as well. And people are not wanting to go to these things. People are not wanting to go to the Flames games because of COVID. People aren't wanting to come to the office. And just in our realm of work, having to work, like go and audit existing facilities or stuff like that, there's a shortage in the kids not wanting to do that. From the financial side, yeah, that's been my biggest challenge, I would say, from day one, is the fact that we are a for-profit, because if you pay for our services, you're more than willing to implement them or make the changes versus provide a donation and then get a report and just be like, yeah, whatever, throw it on your desk. So for us, I've never been able to really access any funding, other than luckily my family business has a line of credit that we were able to pull from initially, because, you know, as much as they say, oh, if you're a female and you're an entrepreneur and you're disabled and blah, blah, you can sign up for all these things. It actually isn't true. You have to be in certain categories, and I'm younger, I'll be 40 this July, but there's certain categories that sort of bounce me out. And especially on the fact that we are a for-profit versus a not-for-profit, we get $0. So the only thing that sort of kept us afloat, especially during COVID, as much as everybody's realized that they need to make their spaces better because everybody wants the 6 feet. So we've definitely been busy. We were at least able to get that federal loan to get us through COVID. And it's continued now because people are now seeing the realities. And I think ultimately for my stance, at least the whole George Floyd scenario, which is absolutely horrendous, has opened everybody's eyes to making sure that we include everybody, and that diversity is a key aspect of businesses moving forward, whether it's the built environment, whether it's staffing, whether it's events. We've now taken a completely different look into the world, which we've definitely benefited from.
So just a quick follow-up question, Darby. I'm wondering, with some of the challenges you faced on the finance side, as well as your comments about diversity, what are some of the things the government of Alberta could do to support, women business owners to not have some of those challenges?
Well, I think for me, the biggest thing is we're a social impact. And so a lot of times, like I said, a lot of people think that social impact is a not-for-profit. So trying to look at when people are actually looking for funding or financing, to look at what their actual business model is and what they're trying to do, and have a bit of a flexibility of, hey, this actually makes a difference in our country and our province and our cities, versus no, they're just a for-profit, see you later. So I would say, having a bit of flexibility when it comes to that would make it a lot easier, because I've stressed to some of my friends that want to start up businesses is to be very careful on which way you take your business, whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit, because there's way more money provided to not-for-profit and very little funds, unless you're in technology. We're not in tech, so we can't apply for tech. And some of the barriers within the proposals that the federal government especially wants to see for the bigger dollars, like the $1 million and stuff, some of those are really unreachable unless you hire somebody who's a grant writer or somebody who's actually done that. They do not make those things easy. I get it's a ton of money, but at the same time, we need to make it simpler, and we need to use plain language, and we need to provide supports in helping women in business be able to apply for that stuff. Does that answer your question, Kristen?
Well, I definitely echo your sentiment around not building, you know, a 16-foot wall to get the grant application done, for sure. Like in terms of that, what that flexibility looks like for a woman business owner. And I definitely heard, you know, perhaps there's something that we could maybe look at around supporting women when they're thinking about their business model. Like, how do you even structure your business so you're successful? I'd be interested to kind of hear, like, what would that look like? I'm not fully aware of all the training out there that's available to women entrepreneurs in that realm of, like, when you're doing a startup, like, how do you structure your business? So if there's kind of further thoughts on what would it look like for us to do that, Melana, and then Michelle.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm very well with a lot of organizations that already do this. I personally don't think we should take that funds and use it more in helping entrepreneurs, as we were talking about, be able to offer flexibility, be able to hire. So one of the things is it's very competitive on salaries right now. And as a small business owner, we just can't afford it. I'll give you an example, a digital marketer. So a young digital marketer, this is a colleague of mine. She was getting paid $60,000 a year. She was offered a job from the US for $100,000 a year to do virtually. We just can't compete with that. And it's just unfortunate. When it comes to creating and structuring your business for growth, there are lots of organizations that already do that. There's AWE, Alberta Women's Entrepreneurs. They do a lot of online virtual resources. There's Business Link, there's Startup Canada, Startup Alberta. I believe if people actually can do the research, or there are lots of opportunities. It's the funding that is needed right now. And I don't mean funding like I can go to BDC and get a loan, prime plus 3%, but that's a lot. I have to guarantee there's a lot of things when it comes to getting the funding to help grow and attract the new talent, but it's very expensive. And when you're trying to be reducing your operating costs and looking at your revenue growth right now, it's hard to take that risk and sign up a guarantee saying, oh, I got to pay this back in 3 to 5 years, and it's going to cost me thousands of dollars for that loan. We need something that is really usable now and it's cost effective. Those are the programs that are really needed for entrepreneurs.
How much, let me ask you this, how much competition do you feel there is out there? I want to hear from all three women on this, with the sort of remote working nomads, if you will, that aren't coming to live in Calgary or Edmonton or Alberta even, who are or who are living in Alberta and being hijacked by a company in somewhere else, largely probably the US. How much of a concern is this? Because on one side, I worry sometimes that Alberta, with ability to work remotely, I wonder if we'll end up with some of the issues, you know, that Fort McMurray has faced, where, you know, people fly in and fly out, but they don't really live there. In theory, you're flying in, flying out if you're just working remotely from somewhere else or another country. And then also how many of our workers are being hijacked for out of country, and what kind of impact does that have on smaller entrepreneurial businesses?
It's really large, Minister. Right now, the only program that I could think that we could do to really make it happen is what's happening up north. You know, if you work up in the Northwest Territories, your salaries are a little bit higher, and I believe so. Don't get me wrong. So I have a friend whose son is with the not the police, a mountain ranger. I can't remember, but for him being a ranger, say up in the Northwest Territories, salaries are much higher. Cost of living is lower, but it's an incentive for them to come live and work there. And I believe that as Alberta is trying to grow into a technological hub, we're going to have a lot of hard times with this. I mean, I've heard and met with the founder of Benevity. I mean, trying to get programmers for him, he says, is so hard that he's going overseas and doing virtually. There's locally here in Calgary, there's a great startup here, Bog Apps. And I know the HR manager, she is having such a hard time recruiting programmers, and they really want to grow a culture. So they really want people to come to the office and live here. And they're saying the salaries that these the young techs are trying to get are extremely hard. And we've got to come up with a plan to really entice that technological growth within the staff and within the businesses that we want to bring here in Alberta. As you've seen, energy is changing. Alberta used to be 100% energy focused, but now we're trying to be the new technological hub. Well, we've got to be able to entice more entrepreneurs in that. So I think it's really important where we have, you know, women in tech organizations and more women starting the technical companies, and they want to hire more women more women for their businesses. Women want to work there, but yet when you've got this, you know, monetary dangle of saying, well, you could work for this company out in Vancouver, for instance, or out in Toronto, or in the US, but it's hard. It's really, really hard. So we've got to be really creative and really entice. I know our mayor here in Calgary is really wanting to rejuvenate the downtown, but we've got to be really creative in doing that. And just, I haven't seen a really good program to really entice that yet.
Michelle, you wanted to jump in, I think.
I do on a couple of levels, but I want to build on what Melana was saying about what I guess the millennials are calling the laptop lifestyle that they want, that freedom and flexibility, and this laptop lifestyle has become more prominent because of COVID. Now we understand, okay, we could all work remotely because we've had a taste of it. And especially for women in business, it allows us so much more flexibility with the day-to-day and multiple hats that we wear, and, you know, looking after children, and also not being tied geographically to the location in which we operate our businesses. So I think that's really that enticement of, if we can't compete monetarily, because a lot, just like, you know, downtown Rocky Mountain House clothing store cannot compete with Walmart, nor should they. But how can we offer unique opportunities for people to come and work in Alberta and be here and locate here that are beyond the scope of finances? Is it flexibility? Is it lifestyle? Is it the fact that they, you know, they don't have to commute, that they can work from a laptop but still work within a community and feel like part of a community? You know, one of my dear friends, Dr. Jody Carrington, says we are a human race that are born to be connected with each other. So how can we offer that feeling of connection within our communities, within our financial sectors, within our business sectors, where it's more attractive to be a part of that community than it is to be enticed by the Canadian US exchange rate on payments, for example. Secondly, going back to the original, how can we help women in business get into business and grow, and what government programs could be offered? I totally agree with Melana. There are so many government programs in the startup sector, in Business Link, AWE, Community Futures is also a great resource for startup, but also giving those organizations opportunities to look a little differently at the security that women needing financing come to the table with, because predominantly women are generally more, I guess, predisposed to go into a service-based industry, like the bookkeeper, like the event planner, like the catering, where it's minimal overhead. You're not looking at manufacturing as so much, but it's very much service-based. So when you come to an organization that does offer financing, they'll turn you away because you have no security. You've got no equipment to come to harness, and you're probably not in a position where you're really wanting to put your own residence on the line so much for a startup or a growing or buying even more equipment. So I think a different set of eyes and a different attitude towards what women in service industries can bring to the table to offer a security for financial support. And I might be one of those entrepreneurs that I believe that women need their skin in the game, just like Darby did. Like, go out and get your love money from your family and your friends. They give you money because they love and support you. And put your own skin in the game and invest in yourself, and don't rely on government grants, but make financing more accessible so we can grow at an optimal level. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, thanks, Michelle. Darby, you can have the last word, and then I'm going to hand it back to Associate Minister for closing remarks. Darby.
I'm good. I think I'll just say that, I appreciate this conversation, and it's great to, sort of look into these things and see what's important when it comes to women entrepreneurs, and how we make everybody succeed is the ultimate goal. And we're all here to help each other for sure. So thank you for letting me be a part of this.
And you know what, I will say there was a question about paying it forward, but you all did such an eloquent job of talking about how you're really contributing to your community and supporting other women entrepreneurs. I just left it because your introductory remarks kind of included that. So thank you again so much for joining us, and I'll hand it to you, Associate Minister, for those closing remarks.
Thanks so much. And, Michelle, I really hear what you're saying, that whole idea that when you're in the service industry, if you will, and services as opposed to manufacturing or other sectors, you're looking at a personal guarantee. And for a lot of women, particularly younger women, that's even difficult because you don't have personal assets to the extent that you can even offer much of a guarantee. But a personal guarantee for many women, I think, is anathema because, we tend to sort of think, well, I need to make sure that there's a roof over my children's heads. And, that sort of thinking comes first. And there's no way I'm going to put my home up because what if something goes wrong? And it's not because we're risk averse. It's because we're thinking about our kids first. It's not risk aversion. And so I think we do need to find some different mechanisms. I think our financing industry needs to figure out ways to really step up for women entrepreneurs. There's a lot of talent being left on the table right now, a lot of brain power being left on the table. And it's we need to harness every bit of that if we're going to succeed into the future. And I think women are so key to this. And you've each in your own ways really forged new frontiers. Darby, I just love the work that you're doing. It's so critically important. Melana, you've just done so much in terms of being able to figure out how to build, grow, scale, brought all your talent from the corporate side of things, applied it in business, and how you work with your teams and network that out is just incredible. And Michelle, I don't even know where to start with you. You've got this whole network going, starting in rural Alberta. And you're so right. Being able to work with rural Albertans who have sometimes connectivity issues, who have remoteness issues, being able to deliver those kinds of services in ways that are accessible for them. It really is actually all accessibility, isn't it, ladies? Access to capital, access to facilities, access to information, access to support. But I'll tell you, we're really committed to making sure that we cover off as much as we can as a government, not just in government grants. And there's lots of work to do there because honestly, we need to be better and not just support a grant writing cottage industry out there. But we really do need to think about what are some of the other government mechanisms, whether it's getting rid of red tape or whether it's building actual supports that are non-grant based, or even providing accessibility to information so that more women can actually find what they need. And we'll have an announcement coming from my ministry on that soon. But I really want to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today, your experiences today. Happy International Women's Day, because every day is International Women's Day in my view. And I can't thank you enough for sharing your time today.